Good evening, and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Committee meeting on December the 7th, 2021. Before we start, I will remind council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I will now do a roll call of council for the benefit of the public watching this meeting. I, Councilor Martin, am present and chairing this meeting. Mayor Shantz.
I'm present.
Councilor McMillan.
Present.
Councilor Merlahan.
Present.
Councilor Shantz.
Present.
And Councilor Redekop was not able to attend this evening. I need a resolution to convene in an open session. Mayor Shantz, Councilor Merlahan, all in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have an item to come forward from our closed session. Pardon me? I'm sorry, I missed that. Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Martin. I have two tonight, 7.1.1, the Three Sisters Cultural Center request for funding. They're a client now, and 7.3, the Woolwich Gymnastics Club request for funding is also a client.
So noted. There's an item to come forward from our closed session. Appointment to the Woolwich Heritage Committee, Kim Hutchison, that the Council of Township of Woolwich, considering report C-2021 respecting an appointment to the Woolwich Heritage Committee, appoint Kim to the committee for the term ending December 31st, 2022. Moved by who? Councilor Merlahan and Mayor Shantz. All in favor? Carried. Public meeting. The following portion of the meeting is for information only, and no decisions will be made tonight. Any questions can be directed to the Development Services staff following the meeting. I declare the planning public meeting to be open. Report DS 4621, information report, zone change application for 28 South Street West in Elmira. Ms. Freeze, Director of Development Services, will provide council with an overview of this report. Ms. Freeze, when you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you. The property subject to the proposed rezoning is located at 28 South Street West in Elmira. It includes the former Kiwanis House and a portion of the parking area. The township initiated this zone change application to change the zoning from open space and residential medium density to multiple residential and mixed uses to allow a variety of different uses for an affordable housing development, including street fronting townhouses, stacked townhouses, back-to-back townhouses, and apartments. The purpose of this report and the rezoning is to declare the land surplus and to rezone to facilitate a future affordable housing development, which would follow the rezoning with an RFP to find out who could develop the property. We do understand that there are some concerns with parking, and we will be addressing this in a future recommendation report. But I did want to advise council as well that staff are looking into options for parking, including repaving of the Lions Hall parking area in 2024, which would accommodate an additional approximately 100 spaces on that property. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Committee members, any questions? Councilor Merlahan?
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair Martin, to Ms. Freeze. The community garden where it is on that property, has staff looked at any alternative locations that would be suitable for gardening?
Not at this point. We haven't looked at that, but we can address that in the recommendation report as well.
Okay. That's it for now. Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, we have one registered delegation, Mark McLinney. Mark, you can speak when you are ready.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight on this topic. My wife and I live on South Street West. We do not represent any organized neighborhood delegation. This is just our personal observations and our personal interest in this application because of our the proximity of our home to the applicant property. Fundamentally, we support the application. A couple of reasons. One is that we believe while the community garden is still active, and the counselor asked a really good question about repurposing that somewhere else, I'm assuming that the use of the word former in describing the house itself means that it's underused or perhaps not used at all. Anything that I read around safe and vibrant neighborhoods suggests avoiding things like underused or abandoned buildings. So for that reason, we're all for it being replaced with something that will be actively used by the community. And then, of course, last week I participated in the urban design study information session and heard strong connection between affordable housing and a vital course. For those two reasons, it sounds like a great idea to do something with that property. So obviously not here to oppose the application. At the same time, I don't want to put conditions or any qualifications on our support for it, but we do share what I believe would be the interest of many of the people in the community, and that is around parking and traffic volume and flow. And now maybe part of the ongoing assessment of this application that the traffic study and parking study is done. And for that reason, that's great. But I do appreciate the opportunity to express a couple of views this evening. So developing the Kiwanis House is not in and of itself a concern. It's maybe the tipping point, I guess, for what's happening these days in the community. Obviously, the coming out of COVID is drawing more and more people, which is wonderful, to the community center. That in and of itself, of course, is increasing traffic on Park and South and Ernst and other streets. And then, of course, the recent demolition of the pool at the corner of Ernst and Snyder, and then the future, presumably the future development of housing there, can only increase traffic and parking. And then of course, this multi-unit development at South and Snyder could only mean more cars and more parking. So my interest in speaking tonight is solely and exclusively in respect of our interest to be safe in the community. We have a mix of demographics in that area, right? We've got some young families with young children. We've got some elderly residents. And when you consider that we have single wide driveways and narrow streets, and an increase in parking on the street can only make using the street a little bit more risky for us. So very concerned about that. I'm not a traffic expert. And again, I'm assuming that council and staff will be looking at some sort of parking and traffic as part of the ongoing assessment of the application. But forgive me for indulge me anyway in respect of a couple of ideas that I would like to put forth. First of all, I have to wonder if there's any way to do some calming of traffic and speed on some of the streets in the neighborhood. Signage, in my opinion, is probably not as effective as some other methods of calming traffic. And I'd like to respectfully suggest that that would be a great idea. I notice as well that we have a sign at the end of South Street West that points, presumably mostly out of towners, to use South Street to get to the community center. And I'm wondering if there might be a different approach to out of towners, maybe using First and Snyder or something like that to get to the community center. So again, fundamentally support the application. Don't want to qualify it by putting conditions on it, but I'm concerned about the increase in traffic and parking as a result of not just the Kiwanis House, but everything that's going on in the neighborhood that day. And so respectfully, I wanted to submit our interest to this, and I do appreciate the opportunity this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. Committee members, do you have any questions of our delegate? Okay, thank you, Mark, for your comments. Please turn your video and microphone off now.
Thank you.
Council, is there any further discussion or questions for staff? Council Merlehan.
Yeah, through you, Chair Martin. I don't know if it's I guess it's a bit of a comment. We've been talking about this Kiwanis house and redeveloping it pretty much early on in 2015, I guess. The issues with the home, I know there's been some emails from some concerned people thinking that the house could be repurposed, and the house has asbestos and mold, and is not habitable for people. So I'm glad that we're finally at a spot where we're going to do something with this property, and I do I like the direction of affordable housing. We've been focused on that for a number of years. Now, when the notice came out, I didn't realize how much. I thought it was just a strip of land in the community garden. I didn't realize that property went halfway into the parking lot. So that was a bit of a surprise, and maybe I don't know if that was a surprise to staff as well, or because it wasn't really. We didn't talk about the implications of parking at that point. And I do see on the other side of Lions Hall a big wide open parking lot that certainly can more than accommodate the loss of parking. But I'm wondering if staff has looked at just how close that property now is to Lions Hall, if it's all built out into the parking lot, and are there any implications for how far away you have to be and things like that could be a problem?
I can respond to that through you, Mr. Chair. The delineation of the future property will take half of the parking that was formerly with the Kiwanis house. The other half of the parking would still be available for public use. Depending on how the request for proposal comes back and how a future building is accommodated on that property, there will still be a requirement for parking, and there will be requirements for setbacks from the property lines. So whether or not the parking stays in the same spot or it becomes integrated into the development in a different way, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. It kind of depends on what kind of proposals we get when we put out the RFP. But yeah, it will still require parking, and it will still require setbacks from the property lines.
Okay, so it could be that the parking lot looks exactly the same, just depending on what comes through the pipeline.
Yeah, again, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the parking lot could look the same. However, those parking spaces that are part of this property that's going to be delineated for the affordable housing development will no longer be public parking. They will be associated with that development. So there is a removal of approximately 30 parking spaces from that parking lot that was public.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McMillan.
Is this an appropriate time for discussion or just questions? I'm good with
Question and questions, whatever you would like.
Okay. With regards to the parking, I think one of the submissions that we received had a picture of that parking lot, and my car was actually in it. So I know that the Sugar Kings park in that parking lot 5 nights a week. But they do so because their dressing room door is right at that corner of the arena, and they walk right in their dressing room door. It would be zero hassle for all of the Sugar Kings 5 nights a week to park in the lot that's adjacent to Snyder, that is right in front of the arena. And that would be most of the cars that are ever parked in that lot Monday through Friday. The parking that's at the arena is ample parking for 95% of the events that happen at the community center without those 30 spots. And if we talk about paving the backside of Lions Hall and create another 110 spots, we're going to push that to, 98% of events that happen at the community center and at the arena are going to be covered by parking that is already there. I think the only exception would be when the Dan Snyder Arena gets sold out for an event, like we had with the Ontario Curling Championships, and like what happens with the Sugar Kings when they go to the Ontario Finals. And for Sugar Kings, you're talking about maybe 4 or 5 games a year. The midget team had the Ontario Championships that had a big crowd. They probably overflowed the parking. But we're talking about like hockey events, 6, 7 a year, possibly if it's a really good year. And then special events like the curling or the Paralympic team the sledge hockey team is coming to town. That's great news. Those are the only events where the parking is going to exceed the capacity, even without those 30 lots. So I understand nobody likes parking on their street, but it's going to be a very, very few. Those 30 spots, people will just park in different spots in the arena for the most part.
Council Merlehan.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Through you to Mr. Poupé. I was just listening to the delegate, Mr. McInerney. He was concerned about the traffic on Snyder and traffic calming measures that could be put in place. I know we've talked about Snyder Ave before in the context of that other development, but also through complaints from residents that live and feed onto Snyder. Can you talk to any traffic calming measures or whether or not from a staff perspective that the data supports the residents' assertion that there's traffic concerns?
Through you, Chairman Martin, to Councillor Merlehan, I would have to have staff review Snyder Ave specifically and look to see where it ranks on our priority list and if it is up for any calming measures or not. I just don't have that data with me right now, but something we certainly could look into.
Okay, I guess would that be part of the process here that we're going through, that those traffic numbers and such would be part of the development process?
I would say typically the development would be on the development to look at traffic impacts to what they're proposing. But that's certainly something that it's not hard for staff to look at what the existing traffic data is suggesting right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Fries. Just have a question. We got communication from the Lions Club, and I'm just wondering, is this something new to them, or is this communication typically the way it goes at this point, or should we have talked to them earlier?
So I can respond to that. We did meet with representatives from the Lions Club as well, just recently. I think it was last week or the week before. We're very early in the process, and we did express this to the Lions Club as well. This is just the initial public meeting for the rezoning. So this is still very early in the process, trying to get public feedback and understand what the concerns and issues are. So this would be the time that we would reach out to people like the Lions Club would be right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMillan.
With regards to the wayfinding, the delegation suggested a different route. It's not necessarily connected to this development, but is that something that we could look at? Because it's a really good point. Directing all traffic down Park probably isn't the most, I don't know, the best way for cars, a lot of traffic to go. So is that something that we could look at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, I think that's something that we could discuss with the Infrastructure Services Department and figure out whether or not there is a better option or more signage or less signage or what's appropriate.
Excellent, thank you.
Committee members, have any more questions? Seeing none. Mr. Smith, is there any more speakers for the planning public meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there are no further speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. There being no further speakers, I declare the planning public meeting to be closed. Next, we have presentations. We don't have any. Delegations. We have registered delegations for tonight's meeting. Before we begin, I will read some instructions for the delegations. Please leave your video turned off and your microphone muted until you are called to speak on. Each speaker has a minimum of 7 minutes. A timer will be shown on screen and ding at 1 minute remaining when your time is up. Once you are finished, please turn your microphone and camera off again. You may leave after your delegation or stay on the meeting as long as you keep your camera and microphone turned off. The first item is grant applications for 2022. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So each year, per the grants policy, staff do a call for new grant requests. And this year we have received 3 new organizations requesting grants. They are Hope Spring Cancer Support Center requesting an operating grant of $7,500. Three Sisters Cultural Center requesting an operating grant of $10,000. And the Woolwich Seniors Association requesting an operating grant of $10,000. And then I will note for council that the township has previously provided the Woolwich Seniors Association with an in-kind grant, and the request tonight is to change this to a cash grant. So this report has been provided for information on new grant requests for council to hear delegations from applicants. There are 3 representatives from each of the organizations here tonight who are able to speak to their proposals. Final decisions on all grants will be made during the 2022 budget deliberations. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Council, have any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Smith. We have 3 applicants registered as delegations for this report in tonight's meeting. The first one is Ms. Carter from Three Sisters Cultural Center. Adrian, there you are. Floor is yours.
I do have some visuals if I can share my screen. And do you see all the words or just the images? Anybody? Okay. So thank you, Mr. Chair. A year ago, I came to council in the middle of the pandemic and asking for support in the early days of building our new cultural center in St. Jacobs. And I want to thank you for providing that support as it led to several other programming grants that allowed us to build a public seating area in the unused parking lot, host a couple of online art auctions, and even put on a live music event. And as we transform the old tire garage into a dynamic art and event space, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the great staff at the township. They have been ever so helpful in navigating our construction crew and myself through all the required approvals and sign-offs to make this space into an inviting, accessible, and safe place for everyone. We expect to open to the public by the end of February, when we will be able to engage with the artists in their studios, participate in a workshop, or attend an event. Artists will be invited to rent a studio. Recording rooms will be available for them to digitize their work. So many opportunities are missed because artists' true work is not reflected properly in the digitization of their product. And the center wants to help with that, as well as be a place where artists can get some grant writing and business planning support. The workshop room and event space will be available for community groups, businesses, and individuals to rent as they need. Guilds and societies will be able to hold their meetings or host public workshops at the center. And the event room with its kitchen and bar will be ideal for small conferences or private functions, as well as public events. We are excited to build initiatives that will enhance the creative industry, providing a space where residents can participate in artistic endeavors on a regular basis will benefit the community in so many ways. Art breaks cultural, social, and economic barriers, and so the center will be a place of diverse and inclusive activities, a place where people will be inspired, gain a sense of belonging, and even develop their own self-awareness. Over the past year, my sister and I have had the pleasure of working with the Economic Development Department at the Township on projects that will advance tourism through destination development. Initiatives such as the Elmira Art Exhibit and the Woolwich Art Tour are the types of projects we see the center getting involved in on a regular basis. And so for our first in-person exhibition in the newly renovated space, we would like to mark the second anniversary of the onset of COVID-19. We have begun the work to organize a 10-day exhibition that will look at the impact the pandemic has had on people's mindsets and explore positive ways we can move forward as individuals and a community. Moving forward from Behind the Mask will run from March 18th to 27th next year. And this exhibition is centered upon the display of the local community quilt From Behind the Mask. Launched in October of 2020, this large-scale community artwork focuses on our collective, yet individual, experiences of the pandemic through the creation of mask-sized quilt blocks, reflecting on what has changed the most in our lives since the onset of COVID-19. It weaves the common thread of COVID with the individual stories of struggle and strength. Community members were invited to decorate the front of a block, and accompanying text was added on the back panel. Volunteers tied the blocks together to form one large quilt, which is hung to be visible from both sides. The inspiration for this quilt came from Brenda Reed, a recent graduate of the Art of Architecture at the University of Waterloo. Brenda is an emerging artist and designer. And so combining these talents, she developed this project as part of her graduate thesis, which aimed to create space for pain, resilience, and care within the community. Brenda wanted to help people come together while staying apart, and this quilt provided a way of community members to acknowledge and share what we were all going through. Collecting as many different stories from different people as possible, this quilt is both art and architectural space, authored by hundreds of people in the community. It provides material and space for reflection, grieving, hope, and togetherness. Each block represents a unique voice, perspective, and experience of life during this time. When the quilt blocks are tied together, we are making space together for each other. The hanging of the quilt makes space for these stories to be shared and provides a starting point for community healing. This exhibition at the Three Sisters Center will have the quilt displayed alongside a juried art show, which will involve an open application process to all regional artists to submit work based on the theme Moving Forward. This art show will spark discussions and inspire people to think about ways they can move forward past the pandemic and find new paths in a new world. Now, I find the best way to understand and become immersed in an exhibition is through engaging programming. And this show will offer daily activities that will animate the quilt and art, including festivities to open and close the exhibit, where prizes for the juried art show, including a People's Choice Award, will be presented to the participating artists on March 27th. The public programming offered during the exhibit will encourage visitors to spend time in and amongst the exhibition and with the contributing artists, as they will be able to participate in 3 different styles of artist-led workshops, a drumming and belly dancing event, and 2 spoken word performances. These activities will provide an opportunity for community members and artists to share emotions caused by the pandemic, visualize its impacts, and discover ways forward as individuals and a collective. Art can empower the hearts of people to strive for a better future and be inspired to lead positive and productive lives. And this exhibit will help the citizens of Woolwich look past the pandemic. This important and timely exhibition is an opportunity for the center to express its commitment to the community and show not only the artists, but also the residents what this new space can do for them. And so I come to Council this evening to to ask for support in making this exhibition and its programming possible and free for the public to participate in. Thank you.
Questions from committee members to our delegate? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Please turn your microphone and video off now. Council, is there any further discussion or questions for staff? Okay, next, we'll go to our next delegate. Justin Kirkham, Hope Spring Cancer Support Center. And I believe he has another delegate with him. Justin, you can begin when you're ready.
There we go. Are you able to see the screen?
We can see the screen and we can hear you.
Oh, excellent. My name is Sean Holowatsky. I'm the president of the board of directors for Hope Spring Cancer Support Center. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mayor Shantz, respected council members and staff of Woolwich Township, allowing us the time to speak. We are a community-based organization who has been serving many regions for the last 25 years. And we offer free services for those who face cancer and those who support the cancer journey. We do understand that staff has recommended zero funding for our pilot project, but after seeing this presentation, I hope that there may be some reconsideration. In the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly go over what we do. I mentioned that we have free services that we offer. There are over 100 that are being offered throughout the year, including relaxation therapies, gentle exercise counseling, informational workshops, group therapy, non-medical support, resource library, and children's programming. Why do we matter? The Canadian Cancer Society estimates by 2023 that 1 in 2 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer. 75% of those will survive. And so an important and strong support structure needs to be in place to be able to support these statistics. Hope Spring works very closely with our medical partners to help triage the issues that hospitals face in regards to backlogs and such. And so when government cuts happen, Hope Spring is relied upon very heavily for the non-medical supports. Hope Spring actually touches over 5,000 community members. We provided incorrect data in regards to, which you may see in your notes in regards to who and what we serve. In Woolwich Township, actually, we serve 933 members currently in this fiscal year out of the 5,000 members. We're an extremely passionate group wanting to ensure that anyone facing the cancer journey is able to use our services. What we are asking for support in is a new pilot project. It would be the first of its kind in the province of Ontario called the Cancer Care Concierge. We've separated it into 3 perspectives. So the patient perspective, this position is a regionally relevant and customized position that is based on the needs of the communities we serve to ensure that all of the hurdles for those who are facing cancer are eliminated. The concierge will work from start to finish to ensure those hurdles are eliminated. And you may be asking, well, there might be current tools, or perhaps this is a bit of a duplication, which is inaccurate in that the Canadian Cancer Society provides the direction for people to find where they may want to go. Hope Spring in the concierge position is about working from beginning to end to remove the hurdle in the communities that we serve. We will take the weight off the patient and caregiver so they can focus solely on healing. We will remove, the concierge removes the non-medical pressures placed on medical teams as well, who do not have that skill set or education to answer, the inquiries related to non-medical. The concierge becomes a GPS for the patient and caregiver, and then it lists all the different areas in which we can serve in terms of finding financial assistance, insurance navigation, customizing community non-medical services, recommendations, etc. From the medical perspective, this position and this pilot project was created as a result of our partnership with the Grand River Cancer Center. The medical teams are facing much more inquiries since COVID in relationship to non-medical requests, mental health, navigational tools, etc. And so they asked Hope Spring if we would triage that. Medical teams can direct their patient through the concierge and have back-end tools to list the needs and requests by their patients. And then when they have their checkup, they'll able to see the resolution. We wanted to share with you the estimated cost of this program. It's a 3-year pilot project at a cost of $168,900. But when we back out the amount of dollars that our medical partners are using in payroll to deal with non-medical, it works out to almost $2 million in savings to the regions we serve, which you can see there. We have been successful in having some financial support from Pfizer, Merrick, Canada Helps, George Luana Foundation, and FedEx Canada. And we are going to all of the townships and to the towns and cities and regions that we serve to also participate. Our ask actually works out for the 3-year pilot project of $7,500 we're asking from Woolwich Township, which is a 4.4% of the total 3-year budget, a pilot project. From a community perspective, KW4 Ontario Health team absolutely sees alignment in the navigational structure that they are building and how specialized this is and how it will complement the matrix that they're building and how they navigate general health. Cancer Support Network of centers across Ontario are looking to Hope Spring to pilot this concept, and then they wish to duplicate once the infrastructure is established and tested successfully. And I want to reiterate that it is a first of its kind that is being developed, and that's why we are asking for this one-time grant support. The concierge role ensures that no one is left behind from all of our communities that we service, especially marginalized, disenfranchised, BIPOC, and LGBTQ. And I may add, especially in Woolwich Township, the Old Order Amish and Mennonite population in which we serve, and we serve them through distance porched in-person visits currently. Hope Spring becomes a hub for community groups who support cancer patients, creating an inclusive and collaborative space to library and archive all that's available within our community, both in the region, provincial, and nationally. And we also see this as an excellent opportunity to be able to create that hub and to create the avenue for organizations like Woolwich Community Services and Woolwich Counseling and Woolwich Seniors Association to be able to utilize and to be able to share services and to be able to direct patients through to us. The concerns specifically from our medical partners is that there are too many supports, and where do I begin when you have a diagnosis? How do I find and where do I go? And there's too much duplication just in our region alone, and the result is in giving up, and not just from a person who is diagnosed, but also from our oncologists who are serving the patients and the medical support staff, not understanding which organization to go through. And so that's why they felt Hope Spring as a hub was a smart opportunity. It also will help to eliminate that duplication within the region and by organizations and reveal the gaps and where we need to fix and work within. The Power of Partnership, I've mentioned that this is a program that Hope Spring and Grand River Cancer Center and the hospital network is working together on. So this is a partner project. And here are just some of the testaments and comments in regards to the amazing support and need for this type of concept. And then the other point is why choose Hope Spring? Well, we had transitioned over 90% of our programs online, and we are seeing a 43% increase in services currently. We charge nothing for our services ever. And then we hand deliver all of the wigs, post-mastectomy camisoles, et cetera, to the membership. Our counseling program is free and is provided through Zoom or through phone or through alternative opportunity. And we take great pride in the community partnerships that we work with. And just to share with you, of the 5,000 people that we serve, it works out to be about $60 cost per person to provide all of the services that we offer for free from the budget we work with. And the budget Hope Spring works with to serve those 5,000 people who use our services is roughly $300,000. And why do we need community support? We do not receive government funding. If we were in British Columbia, we would receive provincial health funding, but not in Ontario. COVID relief applications were declined through the United Way Waterloo Region COVID Task Force, as cancer care was not considered an essential or a primary area of focus. Our medical partners see Hope Spring as an essential service. Our revenue since the onset of COVID-19 is driven purely by private grant applications and community donations. Also wanted to point out that 90% of our organization was completely destroyed earlier this year from the severe smoke damage as a result of the House of Friendship fire at the Inn of Waterloo. And while we rebuild supplies and work to relocate, we have fully continued to execute 100% of our programs. So we thank you for your consideration. We hope that you will play a part in this pilot project, which we're very much excited about.
Thank you, Sean. Committee members have any questions? Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to the delegate. Did you say that that works out to about 4% of your budget that you're asked to?
That is correct. We had asked for $7,500 out of the $168,900 that would cover 3 years worth of this concierge role and build out the infrastructure and the support tools that are needed to execute that role. That is correct.
And how did you come up with that number? Is that basically the number of people that are using it from Woolwich? Is that how you come up with percentage?
Currently, no, that it's based on 1/3 of the usage percentage because we are also fundraising for the role, and we are also granting. As you can see, we have some interesting grants that have come through. So we're asking our townships, towns, and regions to provide 1/3 of the usage rate of the organization. So Woolwich Township is at 18, I think it's about 18.7% of the 5,000 members.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for our delegate? Thank you, Sean, for your presentation. You can now turn your video and microphone off. Is there any discussion or questions for staff? Councillor Merlehan?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Martin, to, I guess, Jeff Smith, our clerk. If he could speak to, I guess, the delegate already mentioned that staff have recommended not to support Hope Spring. Can you elaborate on staff's finding in this particular case with the grants, on why you made that recommendation?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation was only made because staff saw that there are other organizations that have provided or the organization is looking at providing grants with, as well as staff couldn't identify a funding source to cover the cost of this grant. However, as I mentioned in the report, ultimately the decision to provide grant funding is up to council. And if you wish to provide additional monies to the grant budget, you could look at providing this grant.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Moving along. Our next delegates are from Woolwich Seniors Association. We have Nancy, Jane, and Stuart. The floor is yours. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair, Mayor Shantz, and members of council for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm here tonight along with Woolwich Seniors Association President Stuart Weber. We made a presentation to Council in June 2021, highlighting the work of the Woolwich Seniors Association in providing programming for the older adult community to keep everyone socially connected and active during the pandemic in the Township of Woolwich and surrounding area. And at that time, we requested financial relief through the COVID Relief Fund, and we thank Council for their support through the last 1.5 years of the pandemic. The Township of Woolwich and the Woolwich Seniors Association has a long-standing partnership with the Seniors Active Living Center grant through the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility. The township's commitment has historically been an in-kind contribution of 20% of the annual operating costs of the Woolwich Seniors Association for an approximate value of $8,540. At the direction of Council's resolution in June to revisit the municipal funding arrangement between the Woolwich Seniors Association and the municipality to provide funding to assist in the operating center, we are here tonight during the 2022 budget discussions requesting an operating grant of $10,000. We understand that there will continue to be some in-kind supports needed from staff as we are tenants and partners of the township at the Woolwich Memorial Center. But our hope is to have the township's commitment be a financial contribution to assist in operations of the center, providing social, recreational, and educational opportunities to the older adult community. We are available for questions from Council.
Council, any questions? Councilor Merlan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair Martin, to the delegation. Were you a little surprised at the recommendation that staff provided for the 8,500 rather than 10,000? Is that something that would affect how you see the next year running with that lesser monies being recommended?
Sorry, is that directed for me, Pat?
That was
Councilor Merlan, sorry.
To the delegation, I should have said, Ms. Lucier.
Sorry.
So, you want me to start over?
No, I have the question. No, we were hoping for the $10,000. We have been financially hit, obviously, as most associations and organizations have been with the pandemic. We are currently trying to reintroduce some of our programming, and without our full capacity and full programming running, we are running short with our with the income that was coming in prior to the pandemic. So from our perspective, our hope is that we would receive the $10,000.
Okay, and then I also noticed in the report over the weekend that staff are recommending that is a complete switch over, that the in-kind portion that they've traditionally provided the seniors is going to be either phased out or just all the way gone. That was a surprise to me because, and I'll maybe ask staff about where that came from because that was new information to me. Can you speak to the in-kind services that you've been provided and how that was calculated to make up the that part of the grant?
Sure. So our in-kind portions were consultation with staff if we were applying for different grants. For example, Jen Horndall's been instrumental in helping us get our seniors community grant. So we would meet and she would help. That's just one example with the grants, but there's definitely a consultation portion of that. There's also supports if we need things that are happening at the centers, if we need help from whether it be maintenance staff, if we're making changes or actively doing things at the center, that the staff is always there providing any services that may be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Those are the examples.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
If I might add something to that question about the in-kind, our thinking is though that there are going to be some, because we are tenants of the Woolwich Memorial Center and we are partners in the Seniors Active Living Center, that there will continue to be some kind of in-kind supports. Just even if they're just minor things, we do anticipate that there will be continuing some in-kind supports in that manner.
Thank you, Nancy. Did you bring anyone else with you to speak?
Our president, Stuart Weber, is here tonight, and he's available if there were any questions that he would jump in on. And I don't know, Stuart, if there was anything that you needed to say.
Well, Nancy has covered it pretty well, but if there's questions for me, I'd be happy to take them.
Anybody have questions for Mr. Weaver? Okay. Thank you to the delegates. Please turn your microphones off and videos off now. Council, is there any further discussion or questions for staff? Councilor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through, I guess, somebody, whoever is going to speak on behalf of the rec department, I was curious about the recommendation that came out with the 8,500 rather than the 10,000, and then the dropping of the in-kind. Initially, when the seniors had approached me about the COVID relief and all that kind of stuff, we talked about the grant and the difficulties they were having meeting their budget and that kind of thing, and the programming. And it was staff originally, and without any prompting or asking by me, thought that the 10,000 would go through the grants, but they would continue to provide the in-kind, and thought that would be a better help to the seniors along the way. And then when I read in the report this weekend, then it seems like that in-kind portion staff want to now completely drop. So I'm just wondering what changed over the course of, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 months.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can start to answer that, and then I mean, if I need to be corrected, Thomas, feel free to jump in. But I have had discussions with Ms. Horndal, who I think supports the Seniors Association quite a bit. For the purposes of the grant, the in-kind support we are recommending would change to a cash support through the grants process. And then we don't anticipate there being more in-kind support from the purposes of the seniors grant. Having said that, we do think that they are partners. They are partners in the building, and we would continue to support them. But I think it's from the grant application process, but that's also subject to change, just as I mentioned in the report. Due to the nature of the provincial grant, there may be some additional funding, some additional in-kind support that is provided throughout the year as needed.
Okay, so it's just in relation to that Ontario grant that they get, but if they need somebody to set up chairs and things like that, typical WMC function, then that would still be provided to them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? There is a recommendation before us. Do you all have it, or do you want me to read it? Mayor Shantz?
Wrong mic. I can move the recommendation. It basically is receiving the report and directing staff to add the applications to the budget process, including these 3 requests. So that we were not making a decision on these requests tonight, but as part of the budget process is how I understand that to be.
Yeah. Somebody second that? Councilor Shantz? Any questions? All those in favor? Larry, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to know if we're able to look at this again when it comes time for the budget process and add to it or take away from it at that point. And
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, through you. Yes, there's opportunity for council to have a full discussion during the budget deliberations process. I think tonight was really for you to get an understanding from the group's own perspective of how each of the requests would support their organizations. But yes, there is opportunity for council to discuss additions or removals from the grants budget during the 2022 deliberations.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry. I should have read the recommendation because it made it quite clear in the recommendation how we would deal with it. I think we had it seconded. All those in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. Next, we have Breslau East Connector Road Environmental Assessment and preferred alternative recommendation. Ryan Tucker, Engineering Project Supervisor, is with us tonight. You have the floor.
Good evening, Chair Martin, Mayor Shantz, Woolwich Council members. I'm just wondering if I could do a brief introduction to the report and then have my delegate, Associate Engineer Dwayne Linder, present, and then take questions from Council. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so staff are bringing forward report IS 32-2021 for the approval of the Breslau East Connector Road Environmental Assessment Project. Staff began the EA in 2019 with the aid of Associated Engineering, acting as a township consultant for the project. The project team has undertaken all the required studies and consultation efforts required as part of the environmental assessment process and are bringing forward the recommendation to finalize the study. The recommendations in the report are that the council of the Township of Woolwich endorses the preferred alignment and cross-section of the proposed Breslau East Connector Road, and that council authorizes the Director of Infrastructure Services to issue the notice of study completion for the Breslau East Connector Road Class Environmental Assessment Project and file the environmental study assessment report with the municipal clerk for a minimum 30-day public review period. So if we can have Dwayne provide the presentation.
Helps.
There, good evening. Do you see the screen? Just want to make sure. And can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. So good evening, Mr. Chair and Mayor Shantz and Council. Happy to be here this evening. And on behalf of Associated Engineering, thank you for the opportunity to be of service. We will try to provide a brief overview of the Class EA study that we completed for the Breslau East Connector Road. It's a fairly lengthy report, 150 some odd pages plus appendices. I will try to make it as brief as I can and concise. We started this project in 2019, and one of the first things we did was to develop a comprehensive problem statement, which was really important that we selected the proper wording for this, which focused on connecting the historic, what we call the old area of Breslau with the new area of Breslau, which included the Hopewell Crossing subdivision, and connecting that between Fountain Street and the new subdivision. So that new roadway would be a new direct connection of the regional road system. And it would also include a crossing of the existing railway tracks. Another important component of the EA study was a focus on active transportation, recognizing the need to connect these communities, not just by vehicles, but also through pedestrian, cyclist, and future transit opportunities as well. Throughout the project, there was extensive stakeholder consultation. We had a project technical advisory group that consisted of members of township staff, region of Waterloo, various departments of the region, the Grand River Conservation Authority. And then we also had ongoing discussions with various agencies, provincial and other agencies that were affected by the study. We also included direct contact with various Indigenous groups, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and also the Six Nations group. Furthermore, there was local residents and property owners within the study area that we consulted with, and fully documented all of the process and all of the engagement that we had throughout the project. The project started in early 2019. We had the first public consultation center in September of 2019, and the second one earlier this fall. And the notice of completion, which will be a formal document, will be filed pending council's approval. So just to provide a quick recap of the first public consultation center, at that meeting in 2019, we presented the problem statement for the attendees. There was approximately 40 people that attended the meeting. We also presented a detailed inventory of all the existing conditions, including archaeological, cultural heritage, ecological, and a traffic analysis to get a good understanding of the study area and the constraints that we were working to. And then we also showed the long list of preliminary alternatives. At the time, we showed 32 different alternative routes for the project, which then we shortlisted down to a more reasonable number. And all that information was available on the township's website. Once we had that short list, and we then needed to confirm and hone in on a preferred alternative alignment for the road to start with. We started with a long list of criteria. I know you can't read that. I'm only trying to demonstrate that there was a long list of criteria that we initially considered. But what we did was try to focus those on criteria that would help us to differentiate between the different alternatives. A lot of these were still applicable, things to be considered during the design process. But ultimately, what we're trying to find is what is our preferred solution. So we focused on those criteria that really helped us differentiate from one alternative to the next. We broke those down into the categories of the natural environment, the social environment, technical environment, and economic, which is cost. Probably the largest driver of this was the natural environment because of the significant ecological features within the study area. In May of 2020, Council endorsed the starting and end points of the alignments or of the alternatives, and that really honed us down to two very similar alignments connecting to the end of Dolman Street, or the future end of Dolman Street at Fountain Street, to the end of Greenhouse Road. And that was, from there we took that alignment and then spent the next period of time trying to refine that process throughout the EA study. At PCC number 2 earlier this fall, this is where we presented the recommended preferred solution. The alignment had been refined and tweaked significantly from the original process. We looked at where we could optimize the alignment to make use of existing farm crossings to avoid significant impacts to the natural features. We also looked at reducing the impacts by shifting the alignment further to the crossing of the tracks, further to the west. And we also looked at the preferred solution includes an urban cross-section, so a two-lane urban cross-section with provisions for active transportation, so a multi-use trail on both sides of the road. And the urban cross-section was deemed important because of the drainage considerations and the challenges of the existing natural features that we were going to be traversing through. We also looked at intersection options at Fountain Street, recognizing that initially on day 1 of construction, it would likely be operating under a stop sign control. But ultimately, as the traffic evolves and the area grows and develops and traffic increases, there would be future upgrades to that intersection to either traffic signals or perhaps a roundabout. Both would be valid at this location. And then we looked at the grade separation, the crossing of the tracks. And based on the information and input from Metrolinx to mitigate the risks and issues at the crossing, it was decided to proceed with an overpass grade separation, so crossing over the railway tracks in the area of near the existing swim pond of the Hopewell Crossing. All that said, the Class EA, the final environmental study report, has been prepared. It's an extensive comprehensive document that pending council's approval will be placed on public record for a 30-day review by the public, and then also an internal review by the ministry for 30 days after that. So the next steps and timing for the work is next week. Obviously, we would go to council for approval. Immediately thereafter, we would publish the ESR and then finalizing the study by sometime in February of 2022. And with that, I thank you and offer any questions.
Committee members, do you have any questions? Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to the delegate. It's not really a question, it's just a comment. And looking at the grade separation there at the tracks, and it looks to me like there's 4 future track options for the future where you're actually able to add 4 tracks there to the existing 1 track. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Yes, there is potentially 4 tracks that would be considered. There is plans by Metrolinx to widen the corridor, and the bridge that we considered looked at the potential long-term solution for what the rail corridor would need, and that would be something during detailed design that I think would have to be finalized. But the preliminary sizing and scoping of that work was based on what we view as the ultimate configuration.
Okay, my comment is I'm glad that you're looking at that. It's a good time to build it now than later. So I just wanted to commend you on that.
Any other questions? Councillor Merlan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair Martin, to the delegate. I'm not sure if this is a question for you. I was looking at the funding in the staff report. Is that something that you would talk to, or would I direct that to staff? Okay, I'll make it to Ryan then. I guess the anticipated construction cost at this point is about over $26.5 million. And it looks like it's all coming from development charges. Is the construction also, will that include this like 4-lane track overpass? Is that all part of that cost? And then would Metrolinx be responsible for some of those costs as well if it's to accommodate their future traffic?
Yeah, through you, Chair Martin, to you, Councillor Merlahan. The budget for the overpass, I think, which was around $14.5 million, does include that widened for the extra tracks. We'd have to confirm that through the detailed design, like Mr. Lindner had discussed. I don't believe that Metrolinx would provide funding for that, but that is something that we can discuss with them when we do to go through detailed design. But I'm not anticipating that Metrolinx would be a funding partner for the project.
Okay, but the rest of like all of the cost associated with this road is all being paid for out of development charges of the development that's going on in Woolwich Township as a whole. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Merlion, that is correct. The road is planned to be funded by development charges, correct?
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Mayor Shantz?
Thank you. I was having trouble reading the map, actually, even when I looked at the report before. Can you tell me where the crossing of Fountain Street actually is?
Through you, Chair Martin, to Mayor Shantz. It is at the proposed extension of Dolman Street. So that would be just between Meadow Street and the Fountain Street Bridge, the rail crossing.
Okay, so it's not at an existing development in Breslau right now. It's in the future development part of Thomasfield. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Martin, to Mayor Shantz. I believe it's Breslau Properties that would be extending Dolman Street out to Fountain. And then we would look to connect to the Greenhouse Road in the Thomas Field subdivision area.
Right. I guess my concern, what I'm thinking and what I'm wondering about is how it's connecting the communities. And that's my concern, is that it actually connects the residential communities to try to pull Breslau together. And that's why I'm trying to understand exactly where that connection is, because there are very few connectors for the two parts of Breslau.
Yeah, so through you, Chair Martin, to Mayor Shantz. From as far as I'm aware, the plan is to extend Dolman Street from Woolwich Street South all the way to Fountain Street. So that would provide that connection. Again, we'd have multi-use trail sidewalks. So that would provide that link to old and new Breslau, if that's the question.
That is the question. I'm just having trouble visual. I understand it's the extension of Dolman Street, but that doesn't exist right now, so it could extend to anywhere. I'm just trying to get a good picture of it in my mind, and at this moment I don't have that, but that's fine. I need another computer here so I can look at two things at the same time. My phone doesn't do it. Thanks.
Okay, committee members, any other questions? Mr. Tucker, did you have any other comments, being that you were cut off earlier?
Sorry, Chair Martin, I believe Council Merlahan has a question.
Council Merlahan?
Thank you. Through you, back to Ryan. I guess to extend on what Mayor Shantz was getting at, would there be, along that connecting route, are there going to be residential homes aligning that, or is this going to be a really busy road where it's basically they're connected, they can walk and use the multi-use trail, but it's still primarily connected through cars? Is that, I don't know if that's helping Sandy or what, but I think we want to see where the connection more is. Are we just connecting the road, or are we actually physically going to have homes closer by?
Yeah, so through you, Chair Martin, to you, Councilor Merlahan. I believe that the Breslau property subdivision will be fronted by homes. The section to the east of Fountain Street, it is Greenfields currently, and I do not believe it's within the urban boundary. So I'm not 100% sure on future development east of Fountain Street, but definitely to the west of Fountain Street, that is planned for a residential subdivision, as far as I'm aware. My consultant does say he does have some imagery that he can share if that does help with some visuals.
Yeah, I think that would probably help.
I don't know if we're able to allow Dwayne to share his screen.
So hopefully you can see that. So what we're showing here down the middle is Fountain Street. The black lines are the new proposed roadway into the Hopewell Crossing subdivision. And then this white line is the preliminary line work for a future residential subdivision, but the Dolman Street extension, the future Dolman Street extension, would be right through here. So that's where it intersects with Fountain Street, and that's where we targeted the connection point for the new road.
Mayor Shantz?
Can you zoom out again? So yeah, that's good. Thank you. So there really is no connect. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion, questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Linder. Please turn your video and microphone now. Turn them off. And if there's no other discussion from council or for staff, we'll move on. Other questions? Next, we have a delegate, Tom McLaughlin, Thomas Field Homes. Is Tom with us? There he is.
Thank you. Can everyone see me?
Yeah, we see you and we hear you.
Perfect. You know, I have a tendency to just start talking when it's on mute, so it's good that you guys can hear me. Through you, Chair Martin, thank you, Mayor Shantz, and the committee for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom McLaughlin. I'm a Vice President at Thomas Field Homes Limited, located at 295 Southgate Drive in Guelph. I'm here to talk about the draft Breslau East Connector Road Class Environmental Assessment. Thomas Field Homes is a significant land holdings in Breslau area and have had a long track record of building great communities in Breslau. But before I start my delegation, I'd like to wish council and staff very happy holidays and a happy new year. Thank you for all your hard work and efforts through this year. It's your hard work that makes the town work, so we really do all appreciate that. And sometimes I think it's a thankless job for you guys, but thank you so much. So over the past 5 years, we've invested significantly in the Breslau area infrastructure, including a pump station, a much-needed intersection improvements at Greenhouse Road and Highway 7. We are one of the 2 landowners for which this EA would need to be secured to complete the Connect Road. We have participated in the various PICs in 2019 and this year, and have been consulted by the Township as a stakeholder on multiple occasions. I thank staff and the consultants for their hard work in producing this document. First off, to our knowledge, Metrolinx currently has no timelines to move forward in developing the GO station at this location. Thomas would also note that we currently are not interested in developer-driven model of the GO station block that Metrolinx is currently driving. The connector route does currently go through an area that is outside their own boundary. So we reviewed the draft report and provide the following comments for your consideration. Section 3.2 of the report identifies the challenges and constraints within the secondary plan associated with building the new collector road within the Breslau East Connector Road corridor, such as providing an appropriate connection and minimizing impacts to Thomas Field Homes Hopewell Crossing subdivision, including the Metrolinx site that is evolving for the proposed development of the new GO station. And the second one is just securing the land from private landowners for the proposed right of way. The preferred alignment that has been pronoted, it's noted that Thomas Field Homes is generally supportive of the alignment, but has concerns with the financial impacts of the design and construction of the road. Section 9.4 of the report speaks to the property acquisitions and notes that based off the property right-of-way width of 26 meters, approximately 1.51 hectares of land would need to be acquired from Thomas Field Homes to accommodate the future road allowance. And then in section 9.5 provides preliminary opinion on the probable costs associated with preferred alignment, estimating the total project cost of $26 million. While the report notes that the project cost estimate will be refined through the bidding and construction process, the initial estimate represents a significant cost to the township and will likely impact the feasibility of the road being constructed in the near and long term. A significant concern is related to this project cost estimate is the implication that Thomas Field Homes and other developers within the township would potentially incur costs to fund the road through development charges. Further to this, the estimated project cost total is likely to increase through inflationary costs and related construction and design, and as well as the increases in the anticipated market value of the lands. Context-wise, in the current 2019 DC in Woolwich has $4,478 dedicated to roads and related in their DC. While it's doubtful that the traffic generated on this connector road would be all local development related, if we use the current DC service of the roads and the related rate against the $26 million, that would need roughly 5,800 units to recover the DCs just to build today's road and related rate. Again, we just kind of want to tie back to the Environmental Assessment Act. The Environmental Assessment Act does note that EAs need to include information that shows how scientific, social, and economic considerations have been taken into account. Additionally, choosing any further alternatives the proponent should at the minimum consider, are they practical, financially realistic, and economically viable? When I do this, I always like to propose a kind of a solution. Economically alternative, or an economic alternative to the overpass would be a cul-de-sac the road on our property and provide a pedestrian bridge, which would allow for the alternative transportation methods to access the Hopewell Crossing community and provide an automotive link to the future GO station if it does materialize. It is noted that the anticipated costs related to the property acquisition should be low given the timeline for construction, which would likely increase at the time the acquisitions are undertaken. These costs will further add to the overall project costs, and as noted, will require additional sources to fund the road, such as increased development charges. Given the current housing market and the cost to purchase residential dwellings, any additional increases in the development charges to fund the road would add the cost of purchasing a dwelling within the Woolwich or Township of Woolwich. I do appreciate your time and consideration, and I'm open for comments or questions.
Any questions for a delegate? Councilor McMillan?
Thank you, Chair Martin, through you. The delegate, just with the last comment about how if development charges were to go up, then the cost of housing would go up. For that to be true, the reverse would have to also be true, which would mean if development charges went down, you would sell houses for less. Is that true? If somebody walks into your office and they're willing to pay $850,000 for a single detached home, and the week before we dropped development charges by $5,000, would you say we will knock $5,000 off the price of that house because the Township of Woolwich charitably dropped their development charges?
We would actually. Generally, we rate the development charges within the agreement purchase and sale. That's how we do it. Conversely, if most agreement purchase sales are written such as that if it increases, that the cost get passed on to the homeowner, because at the end of the day, it's a flow-through cost. The development charges ultimately are paid by the purchaser.
Absolutely, they're paid by the purchaser, no question about it, and they're paid by the purchaser, regardless of what it is. But the difference between the highest bid on the cost of the house and the costs that go into it is your profit. If the development charges go up, the sale price stays the same and your profit goes down. If the development charges go down, the sale price stays the same and your profits go up. You're not going to sell a house for less money than somebody's willing to pay for it. That's basic real estate sales, right?
I think you're confusing. Generally we don't do a closed bid offer. It's or we have a price list, and that's the sale price. So,
and the market for these houses in Breslau, has it changed in the last since the development started?
Yeah, the price has gone up, but conversely, lumber is up. The average lumber cost on a house now has gone up about $90,000. And the other thing we have to remember is we have to replace, when we sell a lot, we have to replace with future land, and that cost has gone up significantly too. So
your margins have stayed the same since the development started?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councilor Shantz?
Thank you, through you to the delegate. So that was quite a bit to unpack, but if I kind of do a Cole's notes, you're suggesting that we would not put a road in, but put pedestrian crossover at the tracks and then have just a trail system out to Fountain Street. Is that correct?
No. So the idea would be just to. So we did provide, our planners did provide a letter back on Monday, but essentially it would be construct the road as the full right of way, except just dead end it, cul-de-sac it, and then provide a pedestrian bridge over the rail track crossings. And if traffic necessitates, or future, you can always build the overpass. I think almost $15 million of that cost is the overpass itself. So, and if you look at the traffic flows that are in the EA study, there's not a huge amount of traffic even at kind of the full build out taking that route, even especially if the GO station is built. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A question about the GO station. So we've been advocating for a GO station in Breslau and are working with Metrolinx and the region to try to make that happen. Did I understand you to say that you're not interested in that on your property at all anymore?
Oh, no, we're interested in the GO station. The problem was that with the new provincial government, the funding model has changed. At the end of the day, it's the GO station's public infrastructure. Now Metrolinx looks for the developer to pay for the station and turn the keys over. Unfortunately, with the development the size it is and the fact that it was already approved, there's no way to kind of recover the $60 million that it would cost to build that station and then make it economically viable for Thomasfield. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just a comment. Staff has been very supportive with the kind of change of government and the change of policy with Metrolinx. I think there is a solution to be found here. It's just, we've got to work towards it. So,
if I can ask a question of staff, is that okay? So the route that's proposed for this connector road, was any part of that decision based on a GO station? Or is this the best route, just sort of eliminating the GO station piece?
Through you, Chair Martin, to Mayor Shantz, staff did keep the GO station in the back of our mind through the EA. It wasn't the driver. It was definitely to connect old and new. But the alignment that we have proposed does not preclude a GO station. The original work that was done on the GO station actually looked at a few crossing locations for this connector road. So where we've actually crossed the tracks would not preclude a GO station in this location.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Ryan. What are your thoughts about a pedestrian bridge rather than a full bridge? And also, I'm wondering if it would be necessary to have the road done right out to Fountain Street if it's just going to be pedestrian, and if that's a dead end road at the bridge, would that work? And then that section of the road go in the future, or how does that work with DC charges for the future?
Through Chair Martin to Councillor Shantz. I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer the DC part of that. We might need Richard Patrick to answer that. But in terms of the road ending south of the tracks and cul-de-sacking, I don't think staff would support that. When we did look at this road, we did look at it as a multimodal transportation. So we are looking for cars as well as cyclists and pedestrians. The concern, if you did do that, it would kind of preclude public transit as well. So if we do get a GO station on the north of the track, that would preclude, again, busing and things like that using the connector road. So I think staff would are looking to proceed with the recommendation for a vehicular road.
Councillor Merlan?
Yeah, through you. I guess the comments about developer charges and with the Metro links there. I mean, the overpass, is a big portion of it, and they want it for future expansion. So it's like goes from 1 track to 4 tracks. I imagine that makes the cost significantly more. And then the township, is going to, once this goes through its period here, then we're going to, next phase is let's add it to DCs and start collecting money to save for this road. I guess, Mr. Patrick, maybe you could speak to how we go about doing that. I mean, Thomasfield is, one of the players involved. I didn't see any comments from Breslau Properties, and there isn't a delegate from them. And there'll be another major player. I guess the rest of the developers in, Elmira and such would have some sort of, the homeowners, future homeowners will be paying for part of this road as well. Can you speak to that? If we have one of the developers here not happy about and not saying it's viable, the road project, that is a significant amount of money for one road. So what do we do? Where do we go from there? I mean, we could approve it and just push everything through, and so what? Or what are the other options?
So through Mr. Chairman, I think the first comment I would make is approving the EA or not approving the EA would be the first step. So if council decided to approve the EA, the next thing we need to do is to include these costs in a future either DC amendment, which we're kind of going through one right now, or future development charges full background study, which our next one is in 2024. And at that time, that is when the next step of what the financial impact would look like. I wouldn't be surprised to see just quickly looking at our DCs and our current background. So they wouldn't be surprised to see the roads component actually double. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But I think really the big thing right now is to say, is council supportive of the EA process? If the answer is yes, then the next step is looking at including this into our background study. When we do that, we'll be holding public meetings, which in turn will be soliciting the comments from all the development community within the township, because I think as it's noted, it is, I guess it is a rate that is going to affect every single developer and builder within Woolwich. So I think it's a real stepped approach.
Okay, well, here's my problem with that is the GO station is not exclusively being used by Woolwich Township. And, we've had, I don't know how many politicians from every stripe come around and get their picture taken about, we're going to have a GO station here in Breslau. And this is going to actually support probably more people from Kitchener and Waterloo and the region. Why is it that Woolwich has to pay, Woolwich developers that are on the hook for paying for infrastructure that this is going to serve beyond the region for transportation. So this kind of amenity, there's got to be a chargeback or the regional government needs to get involved. I mean, they've been pushing for this thing forever, and it's like, gee, I guess I'd push for it too if didn't have to pay for it. But there's got to be something that can be done where other people have to help pay. Other developers, maybe in Kitchener and Waterloo, need to help pay if all of Woolwich developers are expected to pay for something that is going to be much more widely used. And I don't know why Metrolinx wouldn't pay. It's part of their network. Maybe they have development charges that they can pay back onto other areas that benefit, but it shouldn't be just developers here paying for that, in my opinion.
So through Mr. Chairman, I think my comments are, I think unless this becomes a regional road, which I don't anticipate that's going to happen, I don't anticipate the region to be a funding partner in this. And there is not a mechanism that I'm aware of that we can force another municipalities developers to contribute to something that is outside of their boundaries. So that being said, I think the road cost is up to Woolwich. I think it's going to be slowly borne on us unless we're able to find upper levels of funding, because there could be grants that could be coming forward at some point in time that haven't been contemplated or we're not aware of yet, that we may be able to tap into some provincial and federal funding. That is definitely a possibility, and we will definitely continue to explore that as they become available. But I think right now, I hear what you're saying, that it will benefit more than just Woolwich residents, but I'm not so sure we're going to be able to hook anybody else into this. I'm talking about developers in other municipalities.
Okay, so next time we see a bunch of politicians and, Mayor Verbanik making all these tweets and stuff about let's get the GO station and all that, then we'll be tweeting back saying, hey, why don't you come help pay for it then? Yeah, I don't know, that kind of, if I was the developers here in Woolwich, I wouldn't want to pay into that either. I can definitely see that. Thank you.
Mayor Shantz?
Yeah, thank you. This particular road notwithstanding, the region has been working very closely with us, with Metrolinx, and with other levels of government to try to find a solution to fund this GO station. So I hear your argument, Councillor Merlehan. This particular road I see as a connector between the Thomasfield subdivision and the rest of Breslau to try to create some kind of a whole community here that has been an issue for me for quite a number of years. So I see it as a connector for Breslau, and whether the GO station ends up on that particular road or whether it ends up somewhere else. I think the road is basically to connect Breslau together, but I appreciate your argument.
Councillor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Petherick. So if we set our DC charges on today's dollars and we do end up with some upper tier funding, how does that work? As far, do we rebate back some of that DC charge, or do we just bank?
Sorry, through you, Chair Martin. Councillor Sanchez sort of cut out just at the tail end of it, but I think I caught the gist of your question. So really what would happen is that would then form part of the next, I guess, reconciliation of the next background study. So it wouldn't happen automatically. It wouldn't be an automatic thing. But yes, you're right. So if we were to get upper levels of funding and it's something that's been included in our background study, we would have a dollar for dollar deduction. So, we couldn't, say that it's a $20 million project, we get, $10 million. We're anticipating $20 million from BC. We got $10 million from upper levels of government. That doesn't mean we have $30 million. It means we actually deduct $10 million off of the DC component. So it's a dollar for dollar deduction. And that reconciliation would happen either at the next full background study, or at that time being significant enough, we actually may just do an amendment to capture that at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion, questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Please turn off your video and microphone now. Council, there is a recommendation before us. Does anybody wish to move it? Councilor McMillan and Councilor Shantz. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have a delegate, Heidi Kelly, Woolwich Gymnastics Club. Request for funding support. What else? Okay, Heidi, are you with us? Yes, there she is.
I am. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. All right, so my name is Heidi Kelly. I am the Vice President of the Board of Directors for the Woolwich Gymnastics Club. So we're here asking for support from the Township on a funding request, a grant that we've been given. So background for the Gymnastics Club, we have been in the community since 1987. We're a not-for-profit, and we've been serving the surrounding community since then. We provide affordable, high-quality athletic programming for children of all ages, starting at a year and a half all the way up to teenagers. Gymnastics is a sport that provides core foundation for all activities. We do offer both recreational and competitive programs in a supportive family atmosphere. Our club is fully operated by a volunteer board of directors. This request we feel aligns with the strategic alignment of Woolwich Township, and that we're looking for funding that increases the investment in active programming within the health, promoting healthy living and active lifestyles. And the club does promote that through our programming that focuses on fun foundations and fundamentals of gymnastics. So the request that we do have is we have been selected to receive a grant from the Dan Snyder Fund for $2,400 through the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation Services. Because we are not a registered charity, we can't accept the grant directly. So we are looking for the township to accept this grant on our behalf and then transfer the money to us. And then what we would use this money for, this money would help cover some of the expenses to sustain the programming in the township. Like every other programs during the pandemic, we've been hit pretty hard, and that we did not receive any support from the provincial for small business COVID grants. We also had received, we had 2 devastating floods this past year, one in May and then again in June, which resulted in just over $100,000 in loss of equipment. We did have insurance for that, but there is still added burden to all of our finances paying the deductibles because it is 2 different claims, things like that. The other thing is that our lease does expire in February, so we are being forced to move locations. So we will be incurring some fees in order to move all of the equipment to hopefully a new home that we can find. So our ask of the township is to be able to accept this grant on our behalf and then turn around and provide the grant to us. There is an actual form that does have to be filled out from the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation that does need to be signed and completed by the township on our behalf to accept this money.
Thank you, Heidi. Any questions? Councillor Shantz?
This question, I guess, would be for Mr. Petherick, through you to Mr. Petherick. Is that even possible for us to do that and the request?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. We've done something similar back when the St. Nicholas Market had a fire. So we did the vendor relief fund. Those funds came actually through, I believe it's through the KWCF, and the money's flowed from them to us, and then in turn we wrote the checks to the affected vendors. So yeah, we can do this. We've got experience doing it before, and from my perspective, staff are supportive in the request.
Thank you.
Mayor Shantz?
Thank you. I think this seems like a very reasonable request for us to do for an organization that's been part of the community for a very long time. My boys were part of it, and that I won't tell you how many years ago that was because it scares me when I so I would be prepared to move that recommend is there isn't a recommendation. I would make a motion that we provide the flow through funding as requested when the time is right. If there's other questions before we go there, that's fine too.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, quick question before we look for seconders for the mayor's motion. Thank you very much, Heidi, for coming before us tonight. The gymnastics club, I think we probably all have stories of people who are connected to it, and you guys do great work. So thank you very much. You had mentioned that you're looking for a new location. Do you have any leads on that? And what type of space are you looking for?
Yeah, so we did have someone from the township reach out to us to ask for some details about the space that we're looking for. Really, something along closer to like a warehouse type space, anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Our current space is 7,500 square feet. So ideally, we would like minimum that, but at this point, knowing that our lease is up at the end of February, we're trying to find a place just to keep the programming going in whatever kind of capacity that we can while we work with some other potential opportunities. We do have a lead in with another company within the community that's looking to build a building, but that takes time to go through all of the because it's a brand new building that you would need to go through all the development and things like that. So that is on like in talks. We have looked at a bunch of buildings now for probably 4.5 years. There hasn't been a whole lot that has come available for us to use. So we're working with a real estate agent to help us try and find something. But yeah, we are getting down to the wire of trying to find something to keep this going.
Well, hopefully you do. Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I need a second. Richard?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think as part of the resolution, it should be added that council authorized the mayor and clerk to sign any necessary agreements. I think that would help facilitate the transfer of funds.
And somebody would second that motion? Councillor Shantz? Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried.
No, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if there's one more I can do, we actually just also had a very late request, very similar to this one from, I believe, Mr. Brennan is from Friends of Hockey. I believe so. So it is actually still from the very same fund from KWCF. I believe the Dan Snyder Foundation is doing the same thing. So they're going to be asking council support if we would do the same thing for them. But I think David can provide some more information on that.
David?
Yeah, just some quick background. Spoke with Kyle Rank. Basically, what Friends of Hockey is doing is they're actually going to merge their monies in the Dan Snyder Memorial Fund that's held with the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation. However, in order to provide grants out to them, we need to enter into the same thing that Woolwich Gymnastics Club. We need to enter into what's formally called a fiscal sponsorship agreement. And so that just basically allows us to be, in practical terms, the organization that issues the check on behalf of the foundation, because the foundation can't issue it directly. So if council is supportive and doesn't see a need to have Mr. Rank come on behalf of Friends of Hockey, the request is very similar in terms of authorization from council to enter into a fiscal sponsor agreement with the foundation to allow us to do the same sort of work with Friends of Hockey.
Mayor Shantz?
Should we invite Councillor Merlehan back in for this discussion?
Councillor Merlehan.
I'm not 100% certain if Friends of Hockey is a client, but the potential is there. So I am just going to declare on that as well, because I'm not 100% certain, but I'll just stay out of it.
So Councillor McMillan?
We approved the request from the gymnastics club, right? Does the delegate from the gymnastics club, can she be excused and thanked for her time?
Yeah, she can leave. Turn the microphone off, please.
Thank you very much.
She's the center there. It was nice to look at.
Who's in the screen now? Who took the place? Chair
The
Martin.
second request, we just thumbs up and staff can deal with it like they did with the gymnastic club. Or do we need a motion?
Larry.
Larry?
Yeah, just a question. Is this something that we can just blanket if this happens in the future, or is this only happen once a year, or rather than have the delegates come, if it's just going to be a flow through, do we have to hear from the delegates, or can we do a blanket motion?
I would say that if council is generally supportive, because as Richard noted, we've done it with the vendor relief fund. You're prepared to do it with Woolwich Gymnastics. If you're supportive of Friends of Hockey, yeah, certainly a blanket resolution on the books that staff be authorized or delegated to authorize, the preparation of the appropriate agreements for the mayor and clerk's signature. Then I'm sure we can do something, work out something like that, because it certainly would be more efficient. Because it seems council is very much in support of these types of requests, and basically, none of these requests are burdensome in terms of administration or issuance. So I think they're easy decisions.
Councillor Shantz?
I'd make that as a motion then.
Somebody, Mayor Shantz, will you second it? Any further discussion?
Oh, Patrick, yep.
He declared a conflict here.
Well, 1 second. That's why I want to.
Go ahead.
Can I speak? Okay, through you. If we're doing a motion that's a blanket, then, and it's not about Friends for Hockey or about whatever, then I would like to participate in the vote because there's no conflict.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Chair, through you. I agree with a blanket resolution. I wonder, like, for the interest of just transparency and what's happening, would something like this be included on the consent agenda or something just to be approved, or maybe for information of council be included in the agenda packages, just so that it's somewhere in the public record that this had happened? I think talking out loud here for information would probably be would be good. And I think it's good to do it that way as well, because some of these groups, not every group has somebody that feels comfortable coming and speaking to council. It's not always the most comfortable environment for people to speak at. So I think if we could eliminate that barrier, that would be good.
Mayor Shantz?
Yeah. Can we get staff to bring back a wording? I guess I think we understand what we're voting on, and I don't know if staff picked up a wording through our discussion, or if you'd just like to bring it. We'll see it at council next week, I suppose.
If you want, through you, Mr. Chair, what I had, and I hope is accurate, is that staff be authorized to sign appropriate agreements for funding supports where funding is transferring through the township to a group within the township.
But it would have to be a fiscal sponsor agreement with the community foundation. I think the mayor's suggestion is a good one. We could come back with exact wording for the 14th. But if council is consensus supportive of us coming back with a motion.
How many thumbs up I see? See a few. Yeah, okay, good enough. You'll bring it back next week. Okay. Unfinished business, there's none. No consent items. Staff reports and memos. Corporate social media policy.
All right, thank you and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of council. The 2019 KPMG organizational review identified the need for a centralized focus to our township communication initiatives. Over the course of the pandemic, the township's use of social media has vastly changed and became one of the main tools for public notification. In conjunction with our corporate website, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram allowed us to reach a broader audience and increase customer service. As noted in the report, online communication and social media in particular is profoundly changing the way we discover, consume, and share information with one another. A corporate social media policy provides the township with an opportunity to both balance our digital communication tools for maximum benefit and results, while also developing trust and humanizing the township. This policy formalizes roles and responsibilities while centralizing oversight to ensure we are maintaining a cohesive voice while protecting and promoting the image of the township. The township's corporate social media policy responds to a fundamental shift in society by continuing to transform the way the township is communicating. It does so within existing resources and through a well thought out, comprehensive, and planned approach aimed at maximizing the benefits to the corporation and its stakeholders. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite everyone watching to keep up to date on all township current events by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Committee members, any questions? Council Merlehan.
Thank you through you, Mayor, or sorry, through you, Chair Martin, to Rayanne. I'm wondering, you know, in the report, you reference, you know, how many people follow you. Are there any other metrics that the township keeps on, you know, tweets and posts and things like that? Do you look at engagement and reach of these tweets?
So we do have the capabilities through our social media tools to follow kind of insight on posts and stuff. So we do have a little bit of knowledge as to what type of content has a far reach and how we are doing with posts. Usually we find when there's large events, whether it's a snow event or a change to even pandemic regulations, we do get more uptake on a lot of our social media sites. A lot of the information that we do post, we always bring back to our website because that is our main source of information, but we do have analytics on some of our posts.
Okay, and like typically what would you, how far would your best one, you know, the best post you've ever had for the township, how many people are we talking about that you would be able to reach?
Thousands. So we do have some Facebook posts, especially at the height of the pandemic, when we were sending out information, especially when it's coordinated information across the region. We have reached upwards of 10,000 people on post clicks.
Yeah, okay. Now, I'm wondering, part of I kind of see this as the report tonight as maybe a first draft. I felt like there was some areas that probably need more exploration. When you look at the township's social media presence, a lot of it, you know, we're liking or retweeting private enterprise. There isn't really anything talking about, you know, how we go about making those judgment calls on, you know, what is appropriate to repropagate out into the public and republish. And, you know, how appropriate is it for the township to single out certain businesses and not all the businesses when, you know, everybody pays their business taxes and everything. I'm just wondering, did you talk when you were going through the report with other staff about the use now that, you know, there'd be a lot of, oh, you know, this business is having a sale. Let's promote that one. There could be some other business that's a competitor or whatever, and, you know, they don't happen to be part of, you know, being downtown or in St. Jacobs or something, but they don't have those opportunities then. And, you know, and I think, you know, during the whole, you know, Donald Trump phase there, where you heard the Hatch Act in the States all the time, where, you know, government employees aren't allowed to promote private enterprise and things as their position. Is that something that, you know, you talked about, like just the general use of those social media for promoting private enterprise rather than just township related activities?
So we do promote a lot of the content that our local agencies do promote. We are doing that in conjunction with our Rural Recovery Coordinating Committee. We also, through our Economic and Development Officer, is working with her to help promote some of our local businesses, whether it's sharing a lot of their posts on our Instagram stories is where we see a lot of that. And if any local businesses do tag the township, that's where we will share content on their behalf.
Yeah, and just the sharing, like who decides which business gets to share, or, you know, like, is it only just downtown Elmira or just downtown St. Jacobs that gets the opportunity? Or is this something that the township, you know, you're going to have staff that monitoring, you know, I don't know how many businesses we have in the township, but I imagine there's a lot, and promoting other businesses. And do you think that's an appropriate use of staff time to be doing that?
So there is a number of staff that do look at content that we are sharing on behalf of the businesses. And I do believe that it is a good use of staff's time because we are looking to help and promote our local businesses. And we're doing this through the sharing of content.
Okay. That might be a discussion, I guess, for council to have as well. I'm just, it'd be interesting to know how much staff time is being utilized. I know, you know, you jump down the social media rabbit hole and hours go by and all of a sudden you accomplish nothing and you've looked at a whole lot of tweets or whatever. The other issue in the report that I just didn't see anything of was accountability. So this is just a report that monitors the township staff's use of social media. And I'm wondering, you know, there isn't really any kind of recourse on if you have a staff member that goes rogue on Facebook or something and starts posting a whole bunch of, you know, garbage or makes the township look bad. All it speaks to is that the clerk will remove the post, but it doesn't talk about any kind of suspension or some sort of you know, making sure it doesn't happen and I go there only because you know, in town, if you go to EDSS, you can be suspended from school if you even like a post. And this past year, you know, one of the students created a fake account and then people were liking it, and the fake account was saying all sorts of terrible things about EDSS. And they went around, you know, throwing around suspensions until they found the person. A local restaurant, I know a kid who got fired, and my kids they worked at some of these places, and they have social media policies that if you, you know, if you're tweeting or whatever, posting on work time and things like that, that you get fired. And I actually know a kid that got fired. So here in the context of Woolwich Township, I'm just wondering if you spoke about, you know, what kind of accountability is for staff.
Pat, excuse me, I think Ms. Shantz wants to say something.
If I can just jump in, I think that's an HR question, Councillor Merlehan, and perhaps CAO Brenneman can speak to that one.
David?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is we definitely have human resources policies and procedures to deal with those sorts of issues. It's not something that you would put in a social media policy. It would be overall related to our HR policies around staff conduct and what's expected of them in a whole host of areas, not just in terms of use of computer resources, use of smartphones, use of social media, things of that nature. So I'm confident that, you know, we've got those issues covered off within our HR realm.
Okay, can I respond, Chair Martin?
Yes, if you don't take too long.
Well, we're talking about a social media policy. This is the first one that has come here. I'm identifying some areas that I think are missing. I'm only here to make this policy better, and that's why I'm asking these questions, because I'm very familiar with, you know, social media and And as you know, I could spend probably another hour talking about the evils of social media and the bad things for society, but I won't do that. I'm talking specifically about this policy and the conversation I'd love to have. I mean, we've had an experience already on YouTube where we were having a meeting and the comments were going and people were saying all sorts of things that some may be inappropriate or freedom of speech stuff that we all of a sudden enacted a no comments for these types of meetings. That isn't in this policy either. We don't talk about that either. And we have experienced, there's municipalities already starting, and I've forwarded articles to the clerk and to Mr. Brenneman about municipalities that have turned off all commenting because of the hate that is talked about. And we don't have anything in our policy that talks about comments. So this is something that I have professional experience about, and I'm sharing this knowledge and asking the questions, and I don't see how that's inappropriate. I want this social media policy to be great, and we don't have to come back to it and talk about these questions. So if we talk about them now, then we'll get a better policy out of it.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond.
Yes.
So there is a section in the policy that speaks to council, committee of the council, employees, and other authorized users will conduct themselves in accordance with all other human resource and administrative policies on social media when discussing, sharing, or commenting on township business. Further, just to maybe ease your mind, this policy is consistent with all other area municipalities. I'm a part of the regional communications group, and they were great enough to share their policies that this one is consistent with what other townships and cities have on the books as well.
Thank you, Ray. Councilor McMillan.
Thanks, Chair Martin, through you. I think Councilor Merlehan touched on having a few different staff members that spend time on social media. Is that kind of the case? Is it kind of a team function? I think one of the things that we don't think about with social media, or maybe we do and we just haven't talked about it. A lot of people, when they want to engage with the township now, this is how they're going to do it. It used to be that people would come into the township office or they would call. A lot of people under 30 years old are not going to call. They're going to pick up their phone and they're going to send a tweet to the corporate Twitter account and say, my road hasn't been plowed. When are you guys showing up? And I think if you look at different public agencies, a lot of interaction between people that used to happen in the office or maybe by phone or then by email is now happening through Facebook messages and tweets. So is that kind of a teamwork job to respond to those comments and questions? And does this policy help that, or is that kind of like a gap that we have because we're still dealing in the email and telephone era?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a team effort. So we do have an internal communications team that has representatives from each department that sit on it. We do meet monthly, and they all provide content and feedback, especially when we receive comments on our social media sites. If it's not something that's in a specific person's realm that's answering it, they will go to the applicable department to get an answer on their behalf.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? We have a recommendation before us. Is somebody prepared to move it? Mayor Shantz, Councilor McMillan. Any further discussion? Councilor Merlehan.
Yeah, through you just to the rest of council. I think it's worth a discussion about the appropriateness of staff time, like retweeting private enterprise, and at least have a policy on how they go about doing that. It's great to be able to, the township has enough of its own programs at play to be promoting, that, you know, having staff time to promote just certain elements of private enterprise, I don't think is appropriate unless you can come up with some sort of policy that you know, you can explain to a business going, hey, I've got a sale, I've got something going on. Why don't you push my tweets out or my Instagram and stuff? And, you know, so we got to talk about the appropriateness and then how effective it is. You know, I've run the profiles on the Woolwich Township, all their accounts and everything. The engagement is quite low. You know, I looked at the past 90 days, I looked at the past year. You know, engagement per tweet is 0.06%. That's over 195 tweets. That's in the last 90 days. Instagram, 0.894% of 188 posts. Like they're just, the people aren't engaging. I mean, you're swiping and all that kind of stuff. All I want is that we have a conversation, that you know what you're talking about when you're going to pass a policy like this. I know the numbers behind this, and I know you guys don't. And the numbers aren't good. They're not good for most people. You know, it's not that the township's doing a bad job, but if you want to get engagement, I could give you a 20-minute speech on just Instagram, what you need to do to be effective. And we would need an entire team of people just posting content. And we're not content creators. We're serving the public. How are we serving the public? You know, you provide some information about what we are. We have it on our website. You push the social media to that. But if council if they don't want to have that conversation and don't want to know, it's easy to find this information. You don't have to hear it from me. You can Google all this stuff if you want. But I've heard from Google because I've taken training from Google, and I know that email actually is more valuable than any social media, because we can capture those emails and then we own that. We don't own any of those posts, and we don't own any of that traffic. That is all owned by social media, and they can take it away at a whim. And the algorithms change so drastically that traffic drops so significantly that it's hardly worth doing. And small businesses can't afford to have 3 full-time people just working on content for social media. And, you know, I'm not sure it's appropriate that we're using taxpayer money to promote certain businesses. If you don't want to have that conversation, that's fine. I said my bit, and we can leave it at that. But I think we can make a better policy here if we have that conversation. Thank you.
Councilor McMillan.
I think you could make the point without making accusations about what we're willing to do as a council. I think that some of what you say is certainly valid about the amount of time that you have to put in to have really good social media content. I mean, to say that nobody else knows but me is just, I think, unbecoming at best. And I think unproductive at the very least. I think that's not a conversation that's not worth having. How staff is using their time. I don't see that it fits in part of this policy, which is regulating the behavior of the social media, and not necessarily where are we diverting resources, where are we spending our money, how is staff time being spent? Is staff time better spent, answering phones or managing social media content? I think is wrapped up in a different conversation than how are we behaving while we're interacting on social media, which I think is this policy. So I think that the points that you raised, they're not bad, but the fact that we're seconding, about to vote on this policy doesn't mean that we're dismissive of that issue. But I see this as a policy that is governing interaction on social media and not a larger discussion about where we best off putting our constituents' resources. So I think that what you talk about is a worthwhile discussion. I think it would be another worthwhile discussion to say, is that council's job or is that staff's job to manage that time? And should we be, a level above that and talking about staffing resources? I think that's another good conversation. I just don't see that it's part of this conversation, which I see as governing behavior while on social media.
Councillor Shantz.
Councillor Merlehan. But my question is this going to be like a living document that we continue looking at in the future?
Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really to respond to Councillor Shantz and some of the other comments that have been made. I think that Ray has done a great job in moving this this policy forward. This is our first social media policy, and it is something that we are sort of evolving into. As she mentioned in her report, corporate services staff were asked to take over communication services in 2019, and this is sort of partly going through the pandemic and partly working through taking that responsibility over. This is our first first crack at doing this. I think there's a lot more we can keep looking at. I think we can keep doing better and better as we continue to evolve in this service area. And I really thank Council for your comments. But I mean, to the point, I guess this is something that can evolve in the future, and we can continue doing research on best practices from our neighbors in terms of how they're tweeting and the types of content that they include, if that helps Council's discussion tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Oh, Councillor Shantz.
Yes, so I said I agreed with some of Councillor Merlehan's comments, and I guess the comments that I do agree with is the specifics of certain businesses being tweeted compared to maybe a BIA event or something like that. I can see that being beneficial, but highlighting certain businesses, I would like to have a look at that and see whether that's appropriate or not. But other than that, I think that can be brought back in the future.
Okay. We have the recommendation before us. I'll ask the question. All those in favor?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Merlehan had his hand up for.
I think we've heard it. It's getting to the place where we're non-productive. If he wants to make it short, but we spent enough time on this. Councillor Merlehan, you have something to say?
The chair has spoken.
So I'll go back to our recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next, replacing existing vehicle with the new 2022 Ford Maverick Hybrid. Mr. Smith, you'll bring us through on this. I must admit, I had to look this afternoon what a Ford Maverick is. I think it's sort of like a Ranger pickup, but maybe a touch smaller. Am I right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. So just to give Council a bit of a background in this report, as we were developing our 2022 budget, we found a vehicle that is both a hybrid but provides the utility of a truck and very good fuel economy with a reduction in CO2 emissions from our current vehicle. So we found this vehicle. I think it's going to be a good fit for our enforcement division. But as we're going through the budget process, the time for delivery sort of keeps being extended. So that's why we're coming to Council for pre-budget approval for the purchase of this pickup truck. It is funded through our equipment reserve that staff pay into, or sorry, that the bio enforcement budget pays into every year for the replacement of the vehicle. And I guess I would just add through our discussions on climate and greening, we did talk about potentially using some of that money for a replacement vehicle. In the end, we decided not to go with a fully electric vehicle. Just didn't have the sort of the capabilities that we were looking for. This vehicle, because it is a replacement, it's just a it's a more environmentally friendly replacement, but it is very much a like for like replacement. We're not proposing to use any climate or greening funds for this purchase. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from council.
Jeff, I have one question. Does this vehicle have to be ordered, or is it in stock somewhere in inventory?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to you. It does have to be ordered. We're looking at about a 6 to 8 month lead time for the vehicle.
Wow. Committee members have any questions? Somebody prepared to move the recommendation that's before us? Councillor Shantz, Councillor McMillan, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Change order number 55 to contract 2021 to 2022 Union Street for the reconstruction of Bauman Street and College Street. Mr. Tucker.
All right. Thank you, Chair Martin, Mayor Shantz, members of the Woolwich Council again. Staff are bringing forward report IS 33-2021 for the reconstruction of Bauman Street and College Street through a change order to the Union Street 2021-02 contract. Through discussions with the contractor for Union Street, who was J. Weaver Contracting Limited, it was determined that there was potential for the low bid unit rates on Union Street to be applied to the Bauman Street and College Street reconstruction project. Staff saw this as a unique opportunity to potentially save costs on the reconstruction of Bauman Street and College Street. Subsequently, staff prepared a bid package for J. Weaver to review and confirm existing unit rates that applied to the Bauman and College Street works. J. Weaver was able to hold existing unit rates for the majority of the work, with the exception of an increase in concrete work, as well as increases on valves and asphalt. Staff feel these minor increases are warranted with the overall increase in material costs and supply chain issues industry is currently struggling with. Staff appreciate that residents on College Street have raised concerns with the updated urban cross-section of the roadway. Staff have met with the residents to discuss their concerns and provide education on why staff are recommending moving forward with the recommended update to the street. Ultimately, staff are recommending that council approve change order number 55 to contract 2021-02 for the reconstruction of Bauman Street and College Street, and that pre-budget approval in the amount of $1,913,741.16 after HS rebate be approved for the works, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign any necessary contract documents. And with that, I will take any questions that council may have.
Questions, Mayor Johnson?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for meeting with the residents. I had another commitment. I wasn't able to be there. And I wasn't sure if we'd have a delegation tonight to speak to it or to answer questions. Can you just comment on sort of the tenor of that discussion and where it landed?
Yeah, through Chair Martin to Mayor Shantz. As you alluded to, staff did meet with residents on Friday last week, specifically for College Street. And staff took this more as an opportunity to educate the residents. We understood that there were concerns with the narrow pavement due to the urbanization. And staff really wanted to get out there and explain to residents why we are looking for that cross section. And a lot of it has to do with operations. The wider boulevards that we're proposing will provide snow storage for residents, for operations staff. So I think that was the gist of the conversations out there. We did hear and we did understand why residents are asking for a wider pavement, but staff are sticking with the standard cross section for operational issues with the township.
Yeah, if I can, I believe Councillor Merlihan was there. I'm not sure if he wants to have any comments from the residents before we finally vote on this.
Sure. I'd like to talk, if it's okay with the chair, through Councillor Martin to the rest of council. I was very impressed with our township staff for arranging that Friday afternoon meet up with the residents. So it was, I'd say probably maybe 10 residents that showed up. It was a pretty good discussion. I ended up learning more about the reasons behind staff's recommendation. And I think by the end of it, a lot of the residents were very appreciative of the opportunity to engage with staff. And I think some people, they at least understand. I don't think they'll all, some of them still want a nice wide street, and I get that. But one of the reasons for me to support staff on this recommendation is the grades that they need the boulevards to be the way they are, so that they can get a smooth grade to the road, because they have to drop the road about 6 inches. And I know in other parts of Elmira, when they've reconstructed the road, there hasn't been the room to get a proper grade, and sometimes cars will bottom out when they're going into their driveways. And I have dealt with residents that had that complaint in other areas, and I discussed that with the residents and said, hey, you really don't want to be bottoming out your car and stuff like that. But anyway, I feel better about that, and I think the residents feel better too. But you can't please everybody, and I think it is the best recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Chance?
Thank you. Through you to Ryan. What kind of checks and balances are in play when it comes to concrete and pavement increases? Is there somewhere where you can check that increase and make sure that it's an appropriate?
Through you, Chair Martin, to Councillor Chance. I think staff reviewed the bid provided by G. Weber holistically. We looked at all the unit rates. Like I said, G. Weber was able to hold 90% of their rates. They were the low bidder on Union Street, so they have gone through a competitive process. They've also lowered some of their rates. So water main has dropped in price from Union Street. So again, I think staff really looked at that. The increases were minor in staff's opinion. I think concrete went up approximately 12%. And again, understanding supply chain issues and other factors that are in play in this time, staff felt that was a reasonable increase.
Okay.
Any other discussion? There's a recommendation before. Is somebody prepared to move it? Councillor Merlihan? Somebody with Larry would second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Contract extension for flow monitoring program. Mr. Poupet.
Thank you, Chair Martin, and through you to members of council. This is a request for an exemption from the procurement policy for the historical flow monitoring that the Township of Woolwich does, that we would be continuing with AMG Environmental, who is the provider of flow monitors in the township. They look after the data, and they've really provided a great level of service to township operation staff. Our previous program saw operation staff heavily involved. And since we've engaged AMG along with GM Blue Plan for the reporting, we have realized more time for staff to do other things, which is a great thing. So we are asking, we are at the end of the term, we're asking for council to exempt us from the procurement policy, add an additional 3 years to the program, and you can see the annualized costs year over year, which are remaining static from what we've received. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions? Councillor Merlihan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Coupe. Is this flow monitoring, is this exclusively for the inflow and infiltration issues throughout the township? And if that is the case, will this be of the last 3 years, or like we're getting fairly close at stopping the gaps on some of that, the piping, underneath piping that we've been doing. Forget what it's, the CIP program that we have. Can you speak to that, or if maybe I'm completely off base?
No, through you, Chairman Martin, to Councillor Merlehan. We don't see the program wrapping up anytime soon. It's a few things that we use this program for. It's to assess existing wastewater systems as they relate to growth and development areas. So it does allow us to assess capacity or constraints within our systems, and as well as identify areas of proposed CIPP lining, or where we need to tighten up our systems regarding inflow and infiltration. So I would suggest that we are not close to solving those issues. And certainly with the development pressures that Woolwich is facing as well, we would see this as a valuable program well into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? We have a recommendation before. Is somebody prepared to move it? Councillor McMillan? Mayor Shantz? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you.
Breslau Community Center standby generator. Thomas.
Council and Mayor Shantz. RCS has before you tonight an award report for the standby generator at the Breslau Community Center. This facility currently acts as a secondary emergency operations center for the township. So this will better equip the facility and also assist in keeping us operational during power outages. Of note, installation will occur in 2022 just due to lead times for the generators. And so staff will be carrying forward this funding into 2022 budget. And with that, staff are recommending an award to Live Electric, and I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Questions? Councillor Shantz.
Not a question, just a comment for Thomas through you. The location of the generator, I see that's right by the gas supply and also the electrical room. But at one point we were talking about that little section in between the two buildings, maybe using that for an outdoor activity area, like seating areas or something like that for the seniors. So I'm wondering if that generator should just be moved down a little bit, or make sure that there's enough room in there that it's not going to affect any future layout of that area.
Through you, Chair Martin. Yeah, absolutely. We can look at that as an option with the consultant and Live Electric as well too. I don't see any issues with that shifting it slightly. We will likely put a small fence around it as well too, a cedar fence or something along those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? The recommendation before, is somebody prepared to move it? Councillor Shantz? Councillor McMillan? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried.
Thanks.
Other business. Council reports and updates. Are there any reports from council? Outstanding activity list. Any discussion on outstanding activity list? Notice of motion, none. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Councillor Shantz, Councillor McMillan, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.